USA, golf and travel, going where you wanna go, learning things, meeting people along the way you want to know.
This is USA Golf and Travel with Mark Stewart and Rebecca Blackwell, your hosts for the show.
Welcome to USA Golf and Travel. This special edition is unlike any program we've ever done. Here we trace the highlights of the life of Martin Luther by traveling the New Routes to Luther tour in Germany. We visit Eisleben, birthplace of Martin Luther, November 10, 1483. Next, a full tour of Erfurt to see the monastery where Luther studied, beginning in 1505. You'll see the Wittenberg Castle in Eisenach, where Martin Luther hid for a short while, and the most influential city in Germany in the life of Luther, Wittenberg, where Luther posted his 95 Theses and built his Luther Hall. You'll enjoy these medieval towns of Germany and following the man who introduced the Reformation, Martin Luther. Join us now in this half hour that you won't forget, a journey through Germany in the footsteps of the great reformer Martin Luther. Martin Luther spent important days in the city of Erfurt, and this is where we begin today by meeting our guide.
Hans-Peter R., tour guide here in Erfurt. And Hans-Peter, Martin Luther has a big part of his history right here in this town.
Martin Luther came here 1501 to study in this town, but not to become a priest. At first he wanted to become a lawyer. In Erfurt there was a very famous university in this time. This university was founded 1392 and was the only university in the middle of Europe, and therefore Martin Luther came here to this town. And so 1506 he entered the Augustinian monastery here in this town, and in that Augustinian monastery he stayed until 1511. After that he went to Wittenberg.
And we will pick up with more on Wittenberg later. But let's tour Erfurt now.
I will show you a lot of places where Martin Luther stayed and which are in connection to Martin Luther. You must imagine, in the Middle Ages, Erfurt was one of the richest, of the most wealthy towns in the middle of Europe. And there were about 15 until 20,000 inhabitants, but 80 churches, and a lot of them you can see until today, and a lot of them are in the connection with Martin Luther.
Erfurt is a charming and historical city in Germany, one of the most important in the steps of Luther. Our guide told us some stories of what it was like to live in Luther's time. Listen.
We are on the so-called Johannesstraße, and here in this street there are typical houses of the medieval time. In front of us you can see a typical house of a woad merchant, W-O-A-D. It's a plant, a crucifer plant, and from that plant they produced indigo. So over there you can see a little picture with a green parrot, and this picture was a symbol of the name of the house. On the right and on the left you can see two holes. These are the so-called Erfurt beer holes. That means that the owner of houses with that holes had the right in the Middle Ages to brew beer. And if the beer was ready, they put a bundle of straw in that hole. It was something like advertisement. Hello, come on and drink beer.
All the historical sites in Erfurt are so close.
And now we're standing in front of the Church of the Merchants, which is so old. 1522, Martin Luther was here preaching. And as we look up above me here, we can see the plaque commemorating that occasion, a very famous sermon about Martin Luther's view of the righteousness of man. Was done here October 22nd, 1522. Also noteworthy, and I think we should note it here on this show, is that Johann Sebastian Bach's family was very prominent in this particular church. His parents were married here, and from members of the family had various occasions here in this church. So it's a very big Bach church as well.
Let's take a look inside.
You can see the organ of the Merchants Church, and that organ is about 300 years old. Now you can see the altar. The altar is produced by the family Friedemann, and they put it around the 1600. The same you can see to the pulpit, the left side.
Martin Luther is memorialized around every corner in Erfurt, and Hans continues to tell us.
This monument was erected 1883 when Martin Luther had his 400th anniversary, his 400th birthday. Around that you can see the story of Martin Luther here in Erfurt. And at the first picture he is saying to his friends, "So it's our last dinner. Tomorrow in the morning I will enter the Augustinian monastery." As the left picture, he is saying goodbye in front of the door of the gate of the Augustinian monastery to his friends, and after entering he is getting the holy vows by an older monk. Martin Luther entered the monastery. His father was not happy about that fact, because he should become a lawyer. But 2 years later he heard that Martin Luther was a good priest, a good student in the monastery, and when he had his first service, his father came with 20 knights. In modern speaking, we would say with 20 bodyguards from Eisleben, from his hometown, about 100 kilometers from here, to Erfurt. In the background you see the knights, and one of them has a pot, and inside of that pot also there is a lot of money, and they brought the money to the Augustinian monastery. That means he wanted to show, I'm not happy that you have my son, but I will show you that he is from a good house, and I will spend some money for the monastery. Now we are in front of the Krämerbrücke, or Merchants Bridge, or Traders Bridge. Is one part of the Via Regia, the street of the King's Road from Paris to Kiev. And this bridge is about 120 meters long, and there are 6 stone arches since 1325. Yes, that means nearly 700 years old. It's the only bridge in Europe which is with 100% full of houses. The very famous Ponte Vecchio, in the middle of them you can see the water. Here on that bridge, nothing.
At the entrance now to the bridge, to this oldest bridge, we have a church here, Hans, and it has a history of its own. Please tell us its purpose here.
This church is about, it was founded 1325, that means it's nearly 700 years old, and it was a working church with service until the Reformation. It's the oldest church which is used by Methodists all over the world.
Now walk with us through one of the oldest bridges in the world that people have continuously inhabited. Indigo made Erfurt rich, and it's the first thing you see going into the bridge.
To just show you that we have here a little tablecloth that is an example, a perfect example of the original indigo, which was the woad, which is what we were talking about, the merchants here and how they made their money here on the indigo.
As you can see, the morning is just beginning, and the shop owners are just getting ready for the day's business here on the bridge. It's amazing that these interiors have endured for all these years, but possibly it's the extra thick walls that have helped. Hans shows us and tells us about the ceilings.
And here this ceiling is from about 1580. It's origin painted, origin ceiling, more than 400 years old.
Right now we're looking at a set of steps that lead onto the bridge, and these steps are known as Luther steps because Martin Luther used this same passageway when he first became a monk to beg for money, which was a tradition for the novice monks to for the humility to beg. And so these steps are where he was known, right outside of this bridge. This is where he did that. And as you see, as the camera comes down, you'll see that we are back to the river and a beautiful riverside setting. As we're passing by here, we're passing the University Hospital, which has been in existence since 1392. It was here when Martin Luther was here. It's said that he may have spent time here at this hospital mending an injury he had on his upper thigh from a sword. I'm standing by the river once again in a very serene setting. This would be equivalent, the building we're looking to at the right would be equivalent to what we would call a dorm. This is where Martin Luther would have stayed and probably did. It dates back to 1500s. And basically this building here is partially leaning into the water there. It was planned and designed that way. They had a tax structure at the time that any part of the building that was on the land was taxed, and the portion that was out over the water was free. So this is why they did this, and why you see the stilts sort of leaning out there and holding part of the building in the river. Very peaceful setting here by the river for the students. Well, it looks very picturesque to me. Does it to you? It's really just a common house, but it's part timber and part stucco, and it is very, very typical of the time of Martin Luther, and still standing here so that we can enjoy it today. You can see now that we've crossed the street here and we're at the River Gala, and this is just a beautiful romantic spot here in Erfurt for evenings, for sitting out on the terraces and the patios with the flowers surrounding you and the river flowing by. It's a romantic, wonderful little place to have a dinner. Now we're walking down a cobblestone street which leads into the back entrance of the St. Augustine Monastery, which is where we are now telling you that Martin Luther spent his time here in the monastery. He was here for at least 7 years, dividing his time between Wittenberg and Erfurt, as he was a professor in the monastery at both places.
We're on the grounds of the monastery where Martin Luther was from 1505 to 1511. Right now we're going to head on over to the church. Martin Luther came as a Catholic, and later he became the famous reformer who started the Lutheran Church. And right up in this window, right up here, this is where Martin Luther spent his time. Martin Luther became a famous man, and the people said that you need a symbol, and this symbol became the white rose. And we're going to do a close-up on it now. The white rose.
Now we're in the monastery. We're upstairs on the floor where the cells were, the private rooms for meditation and praising the Lord. Martin Luther had one that was particularly his or assigned to him, and we're standing in front of it right now. And if you can look in with me, you'll see that there wasn't much room in the cell, but they all had little windows. This is where Martin Luther would have done his meditation, praying and praising the Lord. We leave the monastery now for more of our tour of Martin Luther. In Erfurt, almost everywhere you look, there's a plaque commemorating Martin Luther. Martin Luther first came to Erfurt to be a lawyer, and while he was here from 1501 to 1505, he stayed in the building that's right behind me here. This was his dorm. This is where he stayed as a student. It was called a Burs. That's the name for it in German. As you can see from the plaque that's hanging on this building here, this is the building in which Martin Luther published his first Bible. So this is an extremely important and revolutionary spot right here where we're standing now. In the Martin Luther years in Erfurt, Martin Luther preached his message throughout the city at many local churches.
We are in front of St. Michael's Church. St. Michael's Church is one of the oldest churches of that town. It was erected about 1200, but during the time of the university, it was a university church. And Martin Luther stayed here with his comrades, with his students, in the time 1500. A little bit later, when he was famous, 1522, he preached in that church to the university professors and about his new ideas, the new Reformation. Here we are in the St. Michael's Church, and inside of that there's a very, very famous organ. This organ is a so-called Companius organ. The Companius organs are very famous in Thuringia, and these are the organs where the family of Johann Sebastian Bach was playing on. And here in that church, 728, there was a cousin of Johann Sebastian Bach, the organ player. There was a deal, 1555, after the so-called Peace of Religion of Augsburg. The ruler of this town was the Archbishop of Mainz. He was Catholic. And so the Protestant merchants, they were very rich, they had a lot of money, and they were Protestant. And so they made a deal. 50% of the churches are Protestant and 50% of the churches are Catholic since that time in the old part of the city.
We want to thank you, Hans-Peter, for being our tour guide here today on the Martin Luther footsteps in Erfurt. And concluding comment from you?
Please come and invite our town. We will give you ideas of the middle-aged town, of the town of the century town, architecture, culture, Martin Luther, Johann Sebastian Bach, and all things of culture for the last 1,000 years.
As you have seen, Erfurt is not only one of the world's most charming intact medieval towns, but it is a must in tracing Martin Luther's life. And now we move on to Wittenberg, another must on the Germany-Luther route.
On this special edition, we are going to take you to some of the cities that Martin Luther lived in, taught in, studied in. And in this particular opening, we are in Wittenberg. I'm standing in front of the very famous door that really started the whole historical event and change of the Reformation when Dr. Martin Luther took his thesis and nailed it to the door. The same door that was there at that time is not here now. It suffered a fire in 1760. But in the meantime, we have a new door here, but this is the location, and this is the church, the famous church that he did it in. So we begin our tour here in Wittenberg, and we'll take you through the town of Wittenberg into some of the other cities that he studied in.
The name Avis is big in Europe. You can count on finding just the car or van you want. And if you need them, they'll be there.
Well, I'm speaking here with Dieter, who is fortunate for us, our guide while we're here in Wittenberg. And Dieter, we're stopping right here. This is an interesting courtyard. Has a particular association with Martin Luther. Tell us about it.
This is the courtyard of Lucas Cranach, the artist. We are in the original studio of Cranach, and he was a good friend of Luther. He painted a lot of wonderful pictures. He gave us the idea of Luther's face. No one else painted Luther like him.
Before leaving this historic studio, we took a closer look at just what Lucas Cranach might have printed with one of the first printing presses. And then they gave me my souvenir from Wittenberg.
On our next stop here in Wittenberg, we're standing now before the St. Mary's Church. St. Mary's Church is important because Martin Luther gave one of his sermons, or many sermons, in German, for the first time speaking in German to the local folks that lived here in Wittenberg at the time. This church is really intact, very much the way it was when Martin Luther was here, and people today, to this day, are still worshiping in this church. If you were to go inside, one of the treasures of Wittenberg and one of the great pieces of art that's still remaining and in original colors is the Chronic altar piece that they have in this church, in which he painted depictions of Martin Luther doing his baptism, having a round table, sit-down dinner, celebration of the Mass, you might say. So this is a very important church, and on the stop in Wittenberg, it's for the art and the fact that the church is still standing here as it was. It's really worthy of a stop. We've arrived here at the Luther House at the end of the street here in Wittenberg, and we're standing in front of his wife's, Katharina, her statue. And Dieter, there's a story behind the marriage
Yes, of course. She was a former nun, a Cistercian nun. Luther was an Augustinian monk, and it was not so really common to have a wedding together. But Luther worked out in the 20s. There is no place in the script where monks or nuns are mentioned, but a family life is okay. But in reality, she decided, I will take Martin Luther. This happened in 1525. Luther named her in his letters in German, Mein Herr Käthe, my Master Katie.
Before we walk away from Katerina here, we're looking over here at her door. She had a birthday present every year, and one of the years she received her own door.
He was very proud to have this big, huge building. And in 1540, she gave Martin this as a gift. Luther had a chance to sit down there in the evening. They had small talks there. And included in this portal of the year 1540, it's the first stone-made picture of Luther. And on the other side of this portal, we will find the Luther rose, his family coat of arms.
It's great to take a little break while you're touring, and we've done that, haven't we, Dieter? We're having our cappuccino here and sitting right in Wittenberg at a charming little outdoor spot. And
we have everything here. Wittenberg was not really damaged during the Second World War. We have the original sites, churches, museums, and I think people can have the feeling of Reformation time here, really. Mm-hmm.
We've been visiting the cities of Martin Luther. We've been in the Erfurt area. Now we're in Wittenberg, and we will be going to Eisenach. And it's just so interesting to see what a medieval atmosphere there is, and that there are festivals over here, and you can come and they dress up. They have the costumes and the whole. It's just a wonderful medieval festival affair in almost all these cities. So I think that's noteworthy, and I think you should look into your tourist information and find out when they have them.
Yeah, the medieval festival in June is very good, yeah, and we like it, especially the Wittenberg people. They like to celebrate this every year. It's the Luther's Wedding Festival. I think we are in the 5th year to have American pastors here from Lutheran churches. And in our Lutheran churches, in our original buildings, they have services for English-speaking guests.
Just to let you know exactly where we are in Germany, we are south of Berlin, north of Munich, east of Dusseldorf. A beautiful drive from Dusseldorf would take about 3 hours, and we would recommend that you rent a car. We have an Avis car, a wonderful Avis car, in which we collected at the airport so conveniently and easily as we came in on our LTU flight. It just was so easy to do.
In our next story, we visit the town of Eisenach for one very important reason. This is the site of the World Heritage Wittenberg Castle. Tourists know about it and flock to this medieval castle yearly in search of history and Martin Luther's footsteps. The Wittenberg Castle played a big part in Martin Luther's life. It was during the Diet of Worms when Martin Luther refused to recant his theses, so the Pope of the Catholic Church excommunicated him and the Emperor hunted for him. But Martin Luther disguised himself and stayed in the castle from 1521 to 1522. And actually, during this time, Martin Luther translated the Bible into German. As a young man, Martin Luther spent quite a bit of time studying in Eisenach, so he was very familiar with the Wittenberg Castle long before his undercover there. As you walk through the castle, you can just imagine what it must have been like during those times. And here is Martin Luther's room, which sheltered him so well while he worked on his own writings and translated the Bible.
I'm here with Joanna Prosch, who is taking us on a tour here in the Martin Luther room at the Wittenberg Castle. And Joanna, please take us on a tour and tell us some of the highlights here.
These are the parents of Martin Luther, Hans and Margarete Luther. And he was here at Wittenberg Castle without his own identification. He was here as Squire Jörg. And it was like a prison for him, volunteer prison here. He was not allowed to tell somebody his identification, and he worked here. He wrote different things about the church, and he translated the New Testament from the original Greek into German.
Then he returned to Wittenberg, and he died in Wittenberg.
We've managed to meet up with one of the Lutheran tours of Lutherans from the United States, and I'd like to introduce one of them right now. Can you tell me what is your name and where you're from?
Stephen Kiss. We're from Cape Coral, Florida.
How far along on the tour are you so far?
Well, we're about 2/3 the way through, but we're right in the middle of Luther country here. Well, it's all the history that we learned, but it's all coming to life here.
I would say so. Well, we thank you for joining us, and we're going to continue our tour.
Okay,
thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Here I am now joined with Pastor Bill White, who has been on a Luther tour before and has a group with him now that we just happened to meet here at the Wittenberg Castle.
You can see the place where Luther was born, and Eisleben, and the monastery in Erfurt, and Wittenberg, and the Wittenberg Castle. Those 4 main sites, I think, yes.
Is this a growing trend to come over here to Germany now?
Well, it has been since there's no longer East Germany. So when the wall came down and the East was opened again, especially for Lutheran Christians around the world to have the opportunity to see the Luther sites, it's become very popular.
This concludes our tour of Martin Luther in Germany. The life of Martin Luther, 1483 to 1546, changed the world, and you will thoroughly enjoy touring the Luther route in Germany. We have just scratched the surface on this show. Plan a trip with this purpose and you will see so much more. We want to thank Radisson SAS Hotel Erfurt and Avis Rent-A-Car and Hans and Dieter, our guides. Join us next week for more of Europe, and until the next time, goodbye from USA Golf and Travel.
USA Golf and Travel, going where you wanna go, learning things, meeting people along the way you'll want to know. USA Golf and Travel, meet old friends and new ideas, from north to south, from sea to shining sea.